Hello and welcome back to Microsoft Build Live. My name is Seth Juarez. I'm very excited to be here. Hopefully my audio is working. Yes, it is. I forgot that I turned it off for a second. I'm really excited to be here because we actually have people that are doing amazing things on Azure, and not just regular people, but sports peoples. And I'm all about the sports. I love the Miami Heat. It was pretty good. I remember when LeBron went over there and they had the trio, and then there's Dwayne Wade just retired, and so I'm a big fan of the Miami Heat. But it's not just what you're doing on the court, but also what you're doing in the back end. Tell us a little bit about why. Oh, yeah, first, tell us who you are. I got excited. So we'll start with you, my friend.
I'm Matthew Jafarian. I'm Executive Vice President of Business Strategy for the Miami Heat and American Airlines Arena.
Fantastic.
My name's Edson Krefker. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Data Analytics.
So we've got the two people here to let us know what they're doing and how they're doing it. So tell us a little bit about why the Miami Heat is a unique organization.
Right, well, you nailed it. I mean, there was a certain point where we dominated on the sports side, and the business just followed. And that was no longer the case. So we had to build an infrastructure, and our leadership really invested in an infrastructure where we could maximize the business operations side through the use of data and technology. And that's what Edson and I have been working on.
So, I mean, I know your situation is unique. You were telling me about this a little bit before, but it's not just about the basketball that's played on the court. There's a lot of other things that are happening when people go to watch a basketball game. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, imagine the second you scan into the building, right? We use digital ticketing in our building. We shifted over from paper tickets to mobile tickets a few years ago. Now we know who 85% of our audience is that walks in. Then there's the food and beverage point of sale system. There's the retail point of sale system. There's the dining reservation system for our premium dining spaces. So our goal was to tie all of those systems together so that we've got a 360 fan profile of who Seth is, for example.
And that's like, you're downplaying a little bit, because not only do you have a sports team, but you also own a restaurant, and several of them, and locations, and concessions, and then you have merchandising, because when you go there, you're probably going to buy a sweater or something, you know? Do they have NBA sweaters?
We do.
Oh,
I'm wearing one.
Oh, see? Yeah. There you go.
Yes,
there
that's
you
right.
go. It's very stylish. I was thinking like old school sweater, like my mom used to knit me, and my dad too. But basically, you have a bunch of businesses that you're trying to get to coordinate. Give us the sense for the amount of data that you're actually dealing with.
Right, so all of those aforementioned systems, basically our ticketing system by Ticketmaster is our ERP. It's what gets people in the building. It's our most important system. And then we key off of that and tie data, aggregate it all together, so I've got a vision of who you are. Now I can act on that. I can give you information that's relevant to you. And, for example, I can lead you towards a Latin concert if that's what you're interested in, a hip-hop concert if that's what you're interested in, a Heat game if that's what you want. Previously, we couldn't do that because we didn't know who you were.
So, not to put too fine a point on it, but you actually run the building too. And for other NBA teams, I know that's not the case, right? Because I used to live in LA, and you know the Staples Center, they have like the Clippers and the Lakers, and they have a hockey team, the Kings, and so it's a different group. You're running the whole package.
That's well said. So we're fortunate enough to run our building. If you're the Lakers, if you're the Clippers, the Celtics, the Magic, you're a tenant in your building, you're a renter. We run the building as well. So like you said earlier, we're basically a shopping center that's open 4 or 5 hours a day.
So what kind of extra data do you get that like brings an advantage for experience, right? Because I've noticed that the thing that actually brings value to the customers is the experience, and you're using data to help amplify that a little bit. Can you give us a sense of the kind of data that you get that nobody else can get when you tie them together?
Well, so first and foremost, I know your ticket manifest.
Yeah.
I know whether you like to go to Latin concerts, like I mentioned earlier, or whether you're just a huge diehard Heat fan, or maybe you go to Heat games, but you only go to the Celtics games. So I know that you're a Celtics fan. So we sort of piece those puzzle pieces together, and I get an understanding of who you are, and then we flow you into our marketing automation, and now you're getting relevant messaging from us.
All right, Edson, you're the technical guy. Tell us all about how this actually works. I mean, that sounds all nice, but now there's a lot of developers watching. Tell us how you actually do it and how Azure helps.
So yeah, the real benefit with Azure is the fact that we're able to spin up servers and processes and leverage services in minutes. So when we were designing this platform, we wanted to be able to increase the velocity of the data, getting from those various source systems to the hands of the people who need to make the decisions as quickly as possible. So we're leveraging the data lake. We're leveraging Databricks along with other orchestration platforms like Data Factory. We also have virtual machines that are doing the AI along the way, and then we land that data all transform and correlate it and push it to Power BI, Power Apps, and also to downstream systems like our marketing automation platform and Dynamics 365 CRM.
I see. So when we're talking about this, I was like, I figured there was like a solution that did a thing, but you're talking about multiple different kinds of things. Can you lead us through like maybe one example of like, because it feels like there's a ton of different threads going through Azure that literally take you back to, then we have this value. Can you give me like one thread? You talked about the marketing automation system. Tell us about like where the data comes from and then what like pipelines it goes through that may be of help.
Sure. So I just want to remind you that the value is the combination of the threads.
Yeah.
For instance, to be able to build that profile around your customer so you can influence their experiences. So, but if we're looking at it from a ticketing perspective, so we capture the information of when a sale gets transacted. And the way we capture the information is we source it from Ticketmaster's databases every 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So we're able to push that information to our data warehouse and include that as part of our history of the purchases buying experience with us. And in that, we also combine it with other information that we have about them from when they use our mobile wallet, when they've made purchases online on our Shopify retail platform, and then be able to route that information into our CRM using our orchestration processes.
And then that way, like for example, let's just say, because I love nachos at sports games. You probably have nachos there. I scan my ticket. I go buy some nachos. You know that that's the kind of thing I like, and maybe you'll have a Nacho Tuesday or something. You'll send me an email for something similar to that. Similar to what you were saying about the concerts as well. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Email, push notification, whatever you engage with the most.
So let's talk a little bit about your experience, because we have about 7 minutes. And I know that sounds like, but it's not a lot of time. Tell us a little bit about what the experience was, because obviously when you use a new platform like Azure, there's a learning curve. Tell us about the learning curve that you had, and what are some of the struggles that you had, and how you were able to overcome them.
So I think the learning curve had to do with how to best use the platform efficiently. So let's talk about the data lake, for instance.
Right.
So if you have a poorly structured data lake, guess what? You're going to use a lot of compute time and a lot of processing time to extract the data in the fashion that you need in order to take it downstream processes. So for us, we needed to make sure that we have a really solid architecture around how we categorize and label the data so that our orchestration processes can pick it up and recognize and be very dynamic in pushing the data to the next stages.
I see. So when the data is going into data lake, I mean, because I'm trying to think of it as a programmer, like you do a 15-minute query from Ticketmaster, you put it into the data lake. What other kinds of, are you querying a bunch of things, or are there things getting pushed in as well? What kind of other data sources do you have that get pushed into the lake, or do you use other data sources as well, or data targets as well?
The data lake is the initial destination for all of our source systems, regardless of the data format, whether we're pulling it in as a query from a database, an API extraction,
right.
or a JSON file structure.
Right.
We need to get it into a common structure that our processes can read to then facilitate the information to the next stages.
Correct. So once it's in the data lake, then I assume that there's a ton of other processes that are working around. Because now that I'm starting to understand, everything goes into one place, and then the magic happens.
Yes.
So what does that magic look like? And apologies for using the other team's name. That was unintended. He's looking at me like, what you doing, man?
What does the heat look like?
What does the heat look like when you're actually pulling stuff out? Because I'd imagine there's multiple systems that are pulling out of it. You mentioned Power BI. Is there other ones that you're pulling that data out of that are using in Azure?
Well, we use our orchestration platform to really do all of the directing of the data. So systems aren't initially directly going into the raw data.
Okay.
What we do is we set up our structured dimensional information so that it makes it easier for other systems to be able to query that information and without having to worry about data cleansing or data interpretation, which is very, very important, because otherwise all you're doing is creating a bunch of mini ETL processes along the way.
Okay.
And that's what you want to avoid.
So what's doing the orchestration for you?
So we do use Data Factory, and we're migrating and POCing Databricks, but we have a virtual machine that has SSIS installed,
Oh,
which
I
is
see.
how we use, which is what we use to manage the data movement across multiple systems, doing parallel processes, and also be able to schedule it and manage the whole process along the way.
And this is absolutely fascinating to me, right? Because I deal, look, everyone knows that I'm the guy that makes demoware. Like I do AI, but I make demoware. And to me, it's super interesting to see like how is this actually working in a business. So I love hearing this. And I love the idea of having like, look, if you already have your own process and you love SSIS, just stand up a VM and do the thing there, and that works for you.
Yes, and I also think that it's worthwhile mentioning that most business applications for SSIS is around the data transformation.
Right.
We don't use SSIS for any data transformation.
I
It's
see.
all for orchestration. It's probably, in my opinion, the best orchestration platform available at the cost.
That's cool. I mean, it's good to hear, right? Because if something works for you, I'm super glad about it. Okay, so we've got about 3.5 minutes. It feels like the stuff that you're doing can be used for other people. I mean, are you having any ideas of like, hey, you can do this too? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, so there are other teams in the NBA that got wind of what we're doing. We're very sort of helpful in that sense, where on the basketball side, we compete, but on the business side, we collaborate.
Sure.
So another NBA team went to the league and said, hey, we want to get into this game. We want to understand our data. We want to act on our data better than we do now. What should we do? And the league actually said, go to the Miami Heat. So we are now helping other teams, one in particular, do what we do using the Azure Data Platform.
And that's amazing, right? Because I mean, you told me a little bit about like the actual like you're getting good financial gain from using this data, and so other people want to do it. Tell us a little bit about what success you've gotten from using this kind of data.
This is Edson's success, but I love telling this story.
No, yeah, of course, of course.
So one of the first things that he did once he stood this up was he started to notice attendance data. And he found opportunities where some of our game day staff could come in 15 minutes later, and other opportunities where they could leave 15 minutes earlier just because it wasn't busy in those concession stands or ticket takers or what have you. So he implemented his plan because leadership believed in him and saved $1 million in our first season with that new plan. That's a data-driven decision.
Did they give you that money so we can go hang out afterwards? I mean, that's amazing. Like with just a tiny insight. And how did you, was there a report you ran, or how did you figure this out? And you're like, hey, look, 15 minutes, $1 million.
It all started with the creation of a dashboard that our general manager requested, Kim Stone at the time, to show all of the ingress patterns. So you could actually see the waves of the patterns, and when you look at it across the number of seasons, we had 9 seasons loaded. We were looking at the days, we were looking at the times, and you could see the shifts in pattern. And so it kind of like sparked the idea of, hey, well, what does our staffing look like during those times when those patterns were occurring? And so that's where it really started to materialize, like, hey, I think we see something here. And in that year, we were able to still maintain a 93% fan satisfaction at the arena, with the highest in the NBA.
While still having people come in 15 minutes later and leave 15 minutes earlier, which is like basically you probably did some Power BI report or something, and you're like, oh. I mean, and most people are thinking like, I need to do some complicated AI or do whatever. No, just put the data somewhere and look at it, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of success in just that. So just to finish up, we got about maybe 30 seconds. What advice do you have to people that have a lot of data? What can they do right now to actually leverage their data to make good business decisions? What do you say?
Subscribe to Azure.
Nice.
Implement the data lake, and structure it as efficiently as possible for fast querying.
I mean, and that's pretty simple, right? And I really like that. So just to finish up, what can people look forward to when they go to Miami Heat games? What kind of experience do they get?
Well, hopefully a great team, but we also want to make it easier to get into the building and to pay. So we're moving to contactless. Tap to get in the building and tap to pay.
That's amazing. One day, I'm going to go to Miami and go to a game, and I'm going to be like, Edson, I'm 100% satisfied. Thanks so much, my friends. Thanks so much for being with us. Thanks so much. We are going to have a little break, and we're going to be talking to someone about what BMW did today inside of the keynote. We'll see you after the break.